Hello once again, this is Brother Teacher. I want to do a quick follow-up again on the Michael Jai White video that I recently did a couple days ago about the big is better than small idea. It's interesting to me that sometimes when you try to speak as clear as you possibly can, there's still going to be people that misunderstand, misinterpret what you say because they're not thinking. They're not reading what you say the way you say it. I don't care how explicit you are, sometimes people are going to still see what they see in their own mind. But this is what I'm going to say right now. I think that I speak pretty clear. I articulate pretty well. And I speak pretty good English. But it just baffles me how people don't seem to get it. Don't seem to comprehend what it is that I'm saying, or the point. Getting the point, that is. So, just a couple people, thank goodness, but the majority of the people that respond to my videos, by and large, agree with my content. I'm not trying to get any hoop-rahs or pats on the back or anything like that. I'm just putting it out there the way that I see it. But there's always a small percentile, very small, but nevertheless still a percentile that disagree, and that's cool. But in this particular instance, one person was telling me or responding to my video saying that Michael Jai White was a fighter at one time and he stopped fighting and he's no longer a fighter, to my point that he wasn't a fighter in the video that I made or tried to make anyway. And then he also said that size does matter in matches. That's why they break the matches up: middleweight, heavyweight, lightweight, and so forth. Pump the brakes, my friend, if you watch this video, or anyone else who's thinking the same way or along the same lines. I never said that size didn't matter in a sporting event. Now, it's interesting, it's very interesting to me how people can't see the demarcation line between real fighting and sport. I understand the difference because I have done that before. So in sport, I know that there are divisions. I don't think anyone knows it any better than me because I participated in it for many years. That aspect is what I'm talking about more specifically right now. So I know there's heavyweight, light heavyweight, middleweight, and so on. I know that there are breakdowns in size. I have no qualms with that. I never said that, ever. I'm not talking about sport and how sport is broken down into classes. That's the sport. But if you are talking about real fighting, I'm not talking about fighting as a career in a sport. If you're talking about real fighting in the street and in combat, size should not matter, because you don't know who your assailant is, you don't know who your opponent is, you don't know who the person is that's standing on the other side of you. If you are a small person, you can't pick and choose your fights in a street. I'm talking about real fighting, my friend, my friends. I'm talking about real fighting, not about sports that's orchestrated, that's set up, that's planned out, that has rules and regulations. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about real fighting. For example, Bruce Lee's whole life in martial arts was predicated on real fighting. That's why he did not participate in sport. Should I be a little bit more emphatic? Sport is not the same as real fighting. So even if you have a Chuck Norris, for example, that touted that he was a middleweight world champion, you cannot pull him out of that and bring him into the street and say that he's a great fighter. Doesn't work that way. Doesn't mean that he couldn't fight in the street, but he wanted to compare Bruce Lee in so many words, in the way in which he tried to explain it. I was a world champion at that time. World champion versus Bruce Lee, as it related to Chuck Norris at the time, did not equate, because Bruce Lee was not that person. Bruce Lee was a real fighter. There are people who practice real fighting to prepare for the real world, separate of sport. So the individual that responded, or the individuals perhaps that may have responded to my video about Michael Jai White and the weight class thing, I'm talking about real fighting. So if you, whoever you are listening to me right now, let's say you are a big person, a large person, 200 plus, 250, 300 pounds, and you are in a real fight with a person smaller than you, just because you are a bigger fighter does not mean that you're going to dominate the smaller fighter. It does not. I hope you're getting my point now. It does not. It depends on the person on either side, skill level and will to win. It also depends on your purpose in fighting. From a philosophical / spiritual standpoint in martial arts, and maybe you're not on this level that I'm talking about, it does matter. From a spiritual / philosophical standpoint, right makes right sometimes. So if you are a smaller person in a fight with a larger person, just because he's bigger doesn't mean that he's going to beat you, because you have advantages and disadvantages, same as the bigger person has advantages and disadvantages. So it depends on the person in the fight, on either side, the big person or the smaller person. So the real issue and the real point is here, that Michael Jai White put out the idea that just because you are a smaller person versus a big person, because the bigger person outweighs you, that bigger person is going to dominate you. That was what he was saying, and that's what I'm saying is not true. Not necessarily because you are the bigger person means that you're going to win. Not necessarily. So that is to say that across the board, every fight between every small person versus big person ever in the history of the world, the big person has always won. Not true. Not so. Don't let me bring some documentation. Don't let me bring evidence and show it to you. Don't let me show you videos of smaller people failing bigger people. So it's not in every case, is what I'm saying. Just because you're bigger does not mean that you're going to beat me just because you're bigger. And I know from my own personal experiences that it didn't always pan out that way. Not saying that the big person can't have skill with the smaller person having no skill. They can both be skilled. What are you going to do about it? That's all I had to say. What say ye? So long.